Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, hi. Wow. Can y'all out on the patio hear me? Ah, excellent. Okay. All right. Well, first, welcome to the first All-Alumni Town Hall in Mixer. This is the first year that we've done this event, and I will say we were not sure people were going to come. And it looks like people are here. So thank you very much for coming. I'm going to talk for a few minutes. My name is Matt Haynie. I'm the president of the Association of Rice Alumni this year. And I'm a Will Rice class of 2003 alum. Yeah. All right. Good. And I'm here just to talk a little bit about the association, about the ARA, and a little bit about the Alumni Board. Just give you a bit of an overview about what we do and who the association is. And then I have the privilege of turning this over to President Leebron to talk about the V2C2 and other things that he's working on. So before I do any of that, first I just want to thank the Homecoming and Reunion chairs. Andrew Lynn, I know, is here. He went outside. Yeah, he's making space for everybody, like a good chair. That's good. Natalie Appel, I'm not sure if she's here, and then John Kasbarian. Those are our homecoming chairs this year, and it's really great that they've helped to make this possible. Hey, Andrew, I see you there now.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to homecoming.
I also want to thank the homecoming ambassadors. I don't know if there are any homecoming ambassadors who are here today, but they really helped make this possible and help things run smoothly, so I really appreciate that too. So, first question you might be asking is, who is the Association of Rice Alumni? Who is this? And the answer is simple. It's you. Anyone who completed at least one full academic year at Rice in a degree-granting program, excluding current students, is a member. So if you're an alum, I mean, you're a member of the Association of Rice Alumni. We don't charge admission. You don't have to sign up. As soon as you get out of here, you're a member of the association. I should put a caveat on that. I know that some of you probably didn't actually go to Rice. My lovely wife is here supporting me, so you're not. There should be an asterisk for those who are just who are putting up with Rice alumni. And who are we? I just wanted to point out the association members, the alumni. We're increasingly national. There's increasingly more alumni who live outside of Texas. Part of that is because we have more students who come from outside of Texas, and so we have people who are going outside of Texas when they graduate. More international, same thing. A lot of students now increasingly are from other countries, and then so we have alumni who are outside of the United States and students who are from the United States who are going outside of the United States. Increasingly grad degree only. If you read the draft V2C2, you saw that one of the real focuses is on the grad programs. And we in the Association of Rice Alumni Board are really focused on trying to welcome in the grad degree only alums and make them feel part of the community. Young. As I think you all are aware, the classes over the past several years have been larger, and that means we have an increasingly large proportion of our alumni are young and diverse. The diversity in the university has increased. And so we're seeing, obviously, a much more diverse alumni population. And I would say all of these create issues that, as the Association of Rice Alumni Board, we have to find ways to make sure that all of these different kinds of folks are welcomed into the community and feel like they can really be a part of the Association of Rice Alumni. Who is the Rice Alumni Board? There they are. There's the 28 members of the Alumni Board from a wide variety of backgrounds. I think some of them are in this room. If you're on the Alumni Board, please raise your hands. All right. We got 28 people. I'm sorry, I should have warned you. Your picture was going to be on the screen, but that's a good-looking group of people. And what do we do? And I'm just going to highlight some of the things that we do. One is we celebrate Rice alumni. We recognize the great things that Rice alumni are doing, and we try to make sure that everybody knows about it, both within the association and within the alumni, and also in the wider public. We coordinate the Laureates Awards. You're probably aware of our big awards that we do. We do the Builders Award, which you may not be aware of. That's a newer award that recognizes young alumni leadership. And we have something really exciting, the Alumni Recognition Committee. And what they do is they're a group of alums who, they get a list of individuals who've done really great things, whether it be in their professions, in academics, and they write little congratulations notes to people. It's a lot of fun. I've done it for several years. I don't know, has anybody here received a note from the Alumni Recognition Committee? Oh, we got at least one. Well, you can aspire to get a note from the Alumni Recognition Committee. I've never gotten one, but I've written several. I mean, and you get to do really fun ones. I did one for Josh Earnest, the press secretary for President Obama. I did one for Anthony Rendon, the third baseman for the Washington Nationals. But then to people who you would never have heard of, but are doing exciting things in a lot of different fields. So, and I will say there are opportunities to be a part of the Alumni Recognition Committee. So if you are interested, please find a board member, including me, and let us know. We connect Rice alumni. We've been very involved with Sally Portal, and I hope that everybody's signed up for Sally Portal. We're trying to use that as an important tool to connect people. We have our regional groups, so that's groups all across the country that have alumni leaders. I, for example, live in Washington, D.C., and I'm part of our D.C. alumni group. And we have our affinity groups, which are groups of alumni that are centered around particular interests or backgrounds. So, for example, our Rice Alumni in Medicine, or the ARUBA, the Association of Rice University Black Alumni. And then we represent Rice alumni. And we have alumni board meetings, and a lot of times we'll have university administrators who come and speak, and we get to have a dialogue with them about issues that they'd like to get alumni feedback on. We have 4 alumni trustees who are members of both the alumni board and the Rice Board of Trustees, and so they operate as a conduit between the two boards. And I will say we really appreciate the work of the alumni trustees because they have to do double the work, but they are a very important part of representing the alumni on the Board of Trustees. And I've got the V2C2 there. That's something that we've been involved with recently in giving feedback to the President's office on the development of the V2C2. And I won't talk too much about it because the President's going to be speaking about that shortly. So how can you all engage as members of the Association of Rice Alumni? 1, you can talk to alumni board members. 2, you can talk to alumni relations staff. And if the staff who are here, if you could raise your hands. They've given up space to you all, but they're here. And I will say that they are incredibly dedicated, and they have done, by the way, so much work to make this weekend happen. And I just want to appreciate their work too. But you should talk to them if you're interested in getting involved. Regional group volunteers. So if you're here from out of town, find out the individuals in your region who are alumni volunteers and talk to them. And affinity group volunteers. So like I said, those groups that are centered around particular issues or interests and backgrounds, you can talk to those folks too. And then you can go to alumni.rice.edu/volunteer, and that is a very good way to get involved and find ways. You can put your information in there. It'll send it to somebody in the alumni office, and then someone will get in touch with you and help you find something that you can do. So what's next? Mingle with your fellow alumni. Learn about those engagement opportunities that I mentioned. Visit the school receptions. After this, as I think you know, a lot of the academic schools are having receptions. I really encourage you to go and visit those receptions. But before you do any of that, I have the privilege of introducing the 7th president of Rice University, David W. Leebron.
Is that the clicker? Great, thank you. Thank you, Matt. Let me wait. See if that falls over there. Now, I'm more used to, I guess, speaking at like some dinners and things, in which I always say, there are very few qualifications for being a university president. One of them is that you're willing to talk while people eat. So I'll modify it for this occasion. Don't let me stop you from your drinking. We did, strategically decide to have this event here. The reason you do something like that is so you can report later that it was standing room only. So having met that qualification, one of the real privileges to speak to a group like this is there are at least, and I find this really kind of astonishing, we have at least 70 years of Rice graduates here. I mean, that's an astonishing sense of our community. It makes it a little hard to speak in a way, because there are some folks, and I hope I'm going to come back to this, that the question as you go around the campus and you look at buildings and you have the question, well, why is this here, right? And it's actually a good way to think about what the university is engaged in, but the perspectives are a little different depending on when you graduated, right? Because sometimes if you graduate a long time ago, it might be sort of frankly, thank God this building is here. If you graduated somewhat recently, the reaction might be, well, why is this here, right? Why is this on the field that I used to play on? And so we've gone through a recent period of growth as a university in a sense of students, but there's so much more that's actually going on in the campus, and some of it's manifest in the buildings that you see, and some of it's not. So what I'm going to try to do today, fairly briefly, so there were two strategies I could follow here. One is assume that all of you have read every single page and word of the V2C2 document that we sent out. Now, we sent it out in a way, right? We didn't make it public, really, because it's a draft. It's truly a draft document. We're working on the revisions, and if we just put it up on a public website, it's hard to say, well, this is really a draft, then people think you're joking. But so we restricted access to a small, tight community of somewhere around 50,000 people, namely all of you. And so that's one strategy I could follow. The other strategy I could follow is assume that none of you have read any of it, and we're going to spend the next 3 hours making sure you get educated. And I'm going to try to steer sort of through the middle of that just to create some, I guess, familiarity. It's called the V2C2. There are a range of reasons that we think we're going to call that. That's not a final decision. It's really a plan, if you think of it, through the second decade of our second century, right? We're in the middle of the first decade, roughly, now. And so it's a plan to cover the next, say, we could say 5 to 15 years as we think about the future. It's also sort of part two of the V2C, so that worked out pretty well. And we had, let me make sure I get this right. Here we go. So here's a kind of quick recap. I'm probably not going to leave that on the screen long enough, but we completed in many ways many of our goals for the V2C. One of the most visible, and at the time controversial, of course, was the expansion of the student body from around, roughly speaking, I think it was 2,800 students or so to about 3,800 students or so. I think most people seem to have grown quite comfortable with that. It's been very good for our student body in the sense we've increased our national and international footprint. We've become more diverse. One of the questions was, by expanding, would we lower student quality? The answer to that is no, because when you go from 7,500 applicants to 18,000 applicants, you actually don't have to give up on student quality. So it's really been a very good experience because our student body is more national and international. It enables us to bring more recruiters to the campus from all around the country, for example. But I don't want to go through each of these. I want to look forward. But we feel it's been a strong success. And then as part of this process, we've gone through a process somewhat not identical as last time, really reaching out to all parts of a community, commenting on drafts. We did something a little unusual, which we didn't do last time, and very few places do, is we released that draft, right? We didn't just release the questions and take a lot of input and say, by the way, here's the final product. We actually produced the draft and said, give us another round of comments if you want on the draft. It's a little risky to do that, but we've actually got incredibly good feedback. On this last round, we got about 1,500 people participating from different constituencies. That means something like 10,000 comments, all of which we've read and thought about whether or not we want to reflect it in the next draft. So that involved alumni, faculty, students, friends. I mean, people were surprised about the range of people in that small group of 50, 70,000 folks who got some requests for their views. So I'm going to kind of go through these fairly quickly just to kind of remind you of what the 7 planks are. This is in some ways an improvement just on number. Last time we had 10 planks, this time just 7. Provide a transformative undergraduate education. And I'll just say briefly, undergraduate education is really changing, has changed. If you look at the things that we're focused on these days. It's not enough just to provide an excellent classroom experience, and people still want that. And there are things you can accomplish in an excellent classroom experience that you can't accomplish other ways. But they also want, and we want them to have, leadership training and opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities, international experiences, mentoring, and that's one of the many places that alumni have a big role to play. We have the Sally Portal now to connect alumni with each other and with our students. Our goal, as it says, is really to provide the very best education that prepares our students, our graduate, for lives of leadership and creative problem solving, or kind of some of the kind of ways of thinking about it we thought were captured. It's very important. We are a top-tier research university. We're unusually configured as a research university. But one way we're actually not unusually configured is the percentage of our students who are graduate students. And that surprises a lot of people. Sometimes I ask a test question, what percent of our students are graduate students? And when I ask that question, people sometimes say, well, maybe 25% or something like that. So the answer to that question actually is about 43% of our students are graduate students. That puts us, by the way, if you compared us to the Ivy League, we would be exactly in the middle of the Ivy League. A great research university must have great graduate programs. There's just no doubt about it. We want to provide some of the quality of experience we provide our undergraduates, but most important, we really need to build some quality graduate programs, expand access, diversity, and inclusiveness. And one of the things we really heard from our alumni this time around was we need to focus on aspects of affordability, and in particular, not just low-income students, but middle-income students. It's a very expensive proposition, and we provide right now, the percentage of student aid that's supported out of scholarship endowments is actually relatively small, that the general resources, not other students' tuition, but the general endowment, for example, annual giving, really supports the bulk of scholarship aid on our campus, and we really need to improve that a little bit. One thing we're really increasingly committed to is when a student comes to Rice, it shouldn't just be that they can sort of do the classroom experience, a few other things. Every kind of opportunity we offer, if there's travel opportunities, for example, in connection with the course, every student at Rice ought to be able to take advantage of that. That means if they have a scholarship for their tuition, they ought to also, we must make available a scholarship for those other kinds of opportunities as well. Build the faculty strategically to achieve preeminence. We can't do everything. It's a really, it's a challenge for us to be among the great universities given our size, but that's who we are. But we have to make some strategic choices. Where are real opportunities, and where can we build strength that involves, for example, not just one department, but many departments across the university? Our best historic example of that is really in nanoscience and nanotechnology, coming from the discovery of the buckyball. And I want to put in a plug, not just for applied research, but for fundamental research. One thing I learned recently, I didn't know that, I don't know how many you know about, this is about carbon-60. You all know what carbon-60 is? Looks like a soccer ball made of little carbon molecules. Gives me a chance to remind folks that even though I went to law school, I studied chemistry and biochemistry as an undergraduate. So that was discovered by three folks who won the Nobel Prize. Actually involved more folks than that. But three of them won the Nobel Prize, Smalley and Curl here, and Sir Harold Kroto, who came from England. And the reason he came from England was because of a particular piece of machinery that Professor Smalley had built. And what he wanted to study was interstellar dust. And so this whole new science of nanoscience and nanotechnology emerged from this kind of fundamental curiosity about our world and the universe. And I just kind of want to, with all the sort of attacks on science and scientific research, that doing really fundamental research driven by curiosity of the world around us remains important if you want to have those incredibly innovative discoveries 30 or 50 years from now. You can't just be looking for the solutions to the problems that you know about today. So building faculty, enhancing our research achievement and reputation, and that includes, oh good, I can play with my little laser pointer here, identifying global challenges that we can contribute to in areas like energy, water. One of the new centers we have is nano-engineered water treatment. Right, once more, building on that fundamental discovery of carbon-60, we now have folks working on new ways to purify water or desalinate water that really can change possibilities around the world. I want to emphasize, I meant to also just emphasize out of that story, the importance of research equipment. Right? So I've now been through this kind of a number of times. They came to me and said, we need a new microscope. I said, fine, I had a microscope when I was growing up. We can afford a new microscope. $7 million later, we have a new microscope. Or I said, we need a new clean room. I said, fine, I got vacuum cleaners, we'll have a clean room. So we're now on a project. We took that project for the clean room, which was probably, I'm trying to remember how much the clean room itself would have cost, but probably at least $15 to $20 million, and decided to do an entire renovation of the building. We're locating the space science building, because facilities are important. And I want to come back to that question, you know, sort of that question as you go around the campus of why is this here? And the answer is, when you see things across the campus, it'll explain what are the things we're focused on. I think some of you have had a chance to visit the new Moody Center for the Arts. We think the arts and creativity are a very important component of what we do here. I think the Moody Center is a tipping point for the arts at Rice. It's also part of a more and more robust strategy of reaching out into the community. If you think about that whole end of the campus and what's there, athletic facilities, continuing studies, the Moody Center for the Arts, the Shepherd School, and shortly the new Rice University Music and Performing Arts Center, if that's what that construction is now, and the Baker Institute, and the Jones School. Those are all the kind of major outreach portions of our campus. That whole part of our campus, in some sense, that's where we can attract people into our enterprise. Two more things. One, extend Rice's reach and impact through digital education, global presence, and alumni involvement. One thing about being a small university is we need all the help. We need all of you to be our ambassadors and engage with the community. Last time when we thought about how do we extend the reach and impact of the university, there was really only one good answer to that question, which was to grow the student population, which we did by about 30%. Now, in 2017, that's not the only answer to the question, right? There are digital opportunities. They're building some more international networks. And at least there are a range of views on this subject, but I think where we're most likely headed, at least for the near future, is not to have a further expansion of the undergraduate on-campus student body, but to look at some of these other opportunities as well. And then the last of the 7 planks is engage Houston and enable its success as a 21st century city. You know, when I arrived here, there was a sense that Rice kind of sat behind the hedges and was somewhat separate from the city and not engaged. I think now the perception is very different than that. We're engaged in a whole range of things across the city, but what we really have now, I think, is an opportunity not just to be engaged with the city, but to be one of those things that's driving Houston forward. And that actually creates great opportunities for research, great opportunities for our students. On the last point, we now have several interesting pieces of off-campus property that we need to think about what we want to use that for. And that's an opportunity to think of that property both in terms of it's in the endowment, we need a return on that property, but maybe there's also a good strategic use of that property that helps advance us and the city. Some of you may have read about the Sears property, which is a 9.5-acre, incredibly strategically located piece of property. We also have a new piece of property we brought next to the Bioscience Research Center. And then the Greenbrier property, which used to house the development folks, has now been vacated. That was a very underutilized property. And so we now have to think about how we might want to use that property, which is a very interesting piece of property because it's a bridge, in effect, between the university and Rice Village. So we want to think about all of that as part of our strategy. As we think about these, we're also thinking about, what are some of the big projects, in addition to these sort of broader goals, what are some of the things that we might focus on? And I'll just make a few comments and then maybe take a few questions from people I trust. You're looking sheepish, David.
My hand's going to go straight up.
Yeah. We're pretty deeply engaged with the medical center, but we think there are opportunities that we're not fully exploiting. And one of them clearly is at the intersection of engineering and medicine. We're excited about that. We have one of the strongest groups of material scientists anywhere. And materials everything is actually now kind of about materials. I tell people, I developed my enthusiasm for materials at the dentist. I went in, I think I needed a crown or something, and what I noticed was, where everything sort of in the past used to be much more about design, you go to the dentist, there's a separate material, right, to mold, for your temporary crown, for your permanent crown, everything they do, there's a custom designed material for it. I was talking to one of our faculty members who says it's really interesting. If you look at the original cars, cars in the first half of the 20th century, they're all built with very basic materials like steel, rubber, whatever. If you look at the cars today, particularly high-end cars, luxury cars, they're all built with design, composite, custom materials. And we are incredibly well positioned. Systems, synthetic, and physical biology, designing organisms, for example, to produce some of the things that we need. Data science, a traditional core strength of the university, but now with impact in a much broader way. Rice has an opportunity really not just to excel by building deep expertise, by extending that to all disciplines across the university. Disparities and inequities, how do we understand some of the problems with inequalities in our society and how to overcome them? Earth, Environment, Energy. The School of Social Sciences has developed a kind of strategic priority around data-driven social policy analysis. I think these are all areas where the university can kind of be a step ahead. Central Quad 4.0, that was sort of really impacts a lot of our community. And really it's time, I think, to two facilities on campus where they're a little bit out of date and they don't reflect the modern world, and particularly the different kinds of things that students do on campus than they used to do. The RMC, I think, needs a rethinking as a student center, an expansion as a student center. Same is true with the library. There's a third building I'd like to build in the sort of corner of the Central Quad, which would be a new flexible classroom building that might be sort of further into the future, but I think this is a great opportunity to kind of have our facilities reflect these new potentials on the campus. And then we have a few other priorities, particularly global health. Some of you may have read Rebecca Richards-Gordon is now one of 4 finalists for the 100 million and change. That's $100 million from the MacArthur Foundation. Even when there were only 8 semifinalists, Rebecca was the only person, the only semifinalist whose primary affiliation with the university. So that's really a remarkable and great thing about Rice and represents some of what we aspire to. So here, things looking going forward, we're going back to the trustees for some further discussion, hopefully approval by January, and then in the spring we'll develop an implementation plan. Success requires a lot of different things, right? It's not just fundraising, that's a big part of it, but also finding other ways to increase revenues, including things like online degree programs. We need to reallocate our resources, strategic organizational changes. And, one thing I like to say about Rice is we're too small to be arrogant. And the implication of that is we build success through collaboration. And sometimes those are internal collaborations, and sometimes they are external collaborations. So I'm going to stop there. I mean, here's the real end, right? Or got to go back to love it and no upper limit. But I wanted to put up on the screen sort of the 7 sort of summaries of our key platforms of our vision for the second century. Thank you all again for coming here, being engaged. Happy to answer a few questions about this or any of those things you saw on the campus and said, why is this here? Thank you all very, very much.
I was just curious, when you talked about reorganization, that kind of caught my ear because my company's going through tons of it. So how does that affect Rice?
About what, reorganization? Well, I think, when anybody says to me, how should I understand the organization of the university, I typically respond by saying, we need to start with a discussion of the Holy Roman Empire. And once you figure that out, then we can move on to something more complicated. How we organize centers, how we organize collaborative efforts, how we think about external collaborative efforts, how we build sort of portals into the organization. For example, one of the things this isn't quite an answer to the ways in which we're a little inefficient that I think are good. For example, we don't have a structure of arts and sciences at the university like many universities. And one of the problems with that structure is it means you have all the schools here and then you have engineering as kind of separate school. I don't actually think that's the most productive structure for a university. But how we organize departments, right? We've had several departmental mergers, and then we had this recent separation of material science and nanoengineering, in part because we had such terrific people there. We wanted to give that effort a little more visibility. So I think all of these efforts, kind of both internally and how we relate externally. So one of the things I think we could do better, for example, is really constituting Rice and making ourselves visible as a research partner for industry in Houston, but also nonprofits in Houston. But people often have trouble figuring out, how do we access the university? Where's the portal? We don't have a common portal for that. So I think we need to think about some of those questions. Do I think we'll do something truly fundamental? I think probably not in the organizational structure. Again, because I think it works for us pretty well. Again, if I look at the School of Social Sciences and this strategy around social policy analysis, it's hard to develop something like that in the arts and sciences structure. By having smaller schools with deans, you can develop more forceful strategies that bring those schools together. So that's a kind of smorgasbord of stuff we might be looking at, but it's really important because, again, being small, you have to figure out how to connect things to each other in a powerful structure and where they should kind of sit within the university. Yes? Oh, yeah.
Do I need to turn it on, or can I just? Yeah, you go. Okay. I think civic engagement is going to be more and more important for universities, and full disclosure, my day job is at another university now. But it's interesting to see that, and nice to see that with the engagement of Houston, but it begs the question of why the city focus as opposed to state, national, or international. I'm not saying it's wrong, but surely there was a conversation there, and I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so, I think for a variety of reasons, our kind of pillars are likely to be local and global. And the global, when you saw before the reference to global challenges is a piece of that. And then we have a number of programs as we think about international engagement are kind of very much engagement oriented. But we're also, for example, we're now more present in Washington than we used to be. And so creating opportunities and internships, and the alumni network has played an important role. One of the things we're really looking at, because Washington's worked pretty well for us because of some very dedicated and loyal alumni, frankly, is how we connect in some of these cities and through opportunities. And there are different benefits. I think if we look at sort of, frankly, do a kind of cost-benefit analysis, the local has one, really being in Houston, having all those opportunities here, being able to integrate that in the educational experience, and then with the global, because you also add to that sort of the intercultural experience and other things. So I think that's where our sort of focus is likely to be. We do want students to have that range of experience and get them off campus. One of the things I worry about, and some things, if you read the whole plan, there's some things in the plan, you can't tell anybody this, where we've put something that gives us the opportunity for further discussion. And so one of my concerns is around our calendar and whether our calendar is providing maximum opportunities for those experiences. So we don't have, as some universities do, and I don't know whether yours does, a sort of 414 or things like that. But if you look at May, right, where if you're not a graduating student, you're generally done before May. And so we could have programs in May that don't interfere with the rest of the summer. I suggested a couple of years ago we look at the possibility of a 2-week spring break and use that for engagement opportunities. So I think it is pretty central because there are a lot of things that come together, whether you look at leadership, social entrepreneurship, for example, intercultural opportunities that come together around that experience. Yes, and then
I'll go.
and then
What about
this
this
woman in the red hair. Well, you know, we're part of the AAU, and there's a lot of effort underway, and I'm not allowed to use obscenities on these occasions. You know, there are several things in the tax bill that, whatever you might think about the tax bill generally, and I'm not here to make political pronouncements, but the kind of attack on universities and on education and on research that those proposals represent are completely misguided. That education and research have been, in my view, beyond contravention, the drivers of innovation and creativity and new industries and new jobs in this country. And the idea of taxing graduate student fellowships or taxing endowments, right, which could cost us millions of dollars a year, is going to further erode our competitive edge in this country. And so, is that enough? I don't know. I'm sorry, what?
You're very involved with the...
I'm involved with, yeah. Yes, they have. I don't like the word lobby. We're going to influence. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, people are trying to pull out all the stops that they can. And look, this is a time where universities, for whatever set of reasons, are not enjoying some of the esteem that we have had in the past. And there are a whole range of reasons for that. But looking at endowments of these institutions as a kind of honeypot to raid a little bit of money from is just ridiculous. And that's about. But I'm sorry, you've been waiting a long time.
So I just wanted to echo what was said earlier about the global alumni groups and things like that. As someone who's been trying to get the London alumni group up for almost 2 years, we would welcome all help, because you're right, it's literally been just alumni, and we've kind of at times felt like we were on our own out there. And there are some wonderful alumni, and you'd be surprised how many. We had, I think my latest list is about 145 just in central London. That didn't even include that. That doesn't even include the outliers like Cambridge and places outside.
I'll come over, we'll have lunch. And,
But great place to go. My question was actually, you mentioned earlier about expanding online, and that's a hot button topic depending on which alumni person you talk to. I mean, I get it. I'm a marketer. Digital's the wave of the future. It's growing. It's a great revenue cash cow. At the same time, people are worried, and I'm on the fence. I could debate both sides. We're worried that it dilutes the brand. We're worried that, you know, part of, for us, being at Rice was being here and the culture and the experience and learning from each other. And I've done both. I've taken online and been here in person, obviously. And I guess I just want to get your thoughts on how you see that evolving and the thought that's gone into that, because it is quite a hot button topic when you talk to alumni.
So there are a lot of aspects of it. Our thinking does not involve any kind of change in the undergraduate experience or having a purely online or something undergraduate degree. The first online degree program that's underway is with the Jones School, the business school. That's probably going to be a more blended program than just purely online. This is one of the ways that universities are going to be reaching out into the world, and we have to decide, you know, are we going to remain in some sense? Because, you know, you can't remain just who you are and remain where you are simultaneously, right? If we just say we're going to just stay exactly like we are today. If you think that we're going to occupy the same position in the world 15 or 20 years from now, that's just not the case, right? And so the same thing around the expansion and some of the other things we've done, we need to, if our ambition is to be among the top well-known research universities in the world, we're going to have to figure out how to continue to do that and still preserve the things that are special and distinctive about the Rice experience. And for me, seizing the online opportunity enables us to do that. The same way I felt a number of years ago that when we had what looked like a chance to have a medical school, I saw that as a way of both increase the reputation of the university and preserve some of the things that have made us distinctive. You're right about we have to preserve the quality and the brand. This is not just a, but we also want to, serve more populations, right? We're not a small kind of liberal arts college that just has a limited mission in some sense. We reach out into the city through our continuing studies programs. That's also part of who we are and what we do. We now have these new on-campus professional master's programs, and a lot of those are students, they just have time to come onto the campus and take their courses and then, go back to their job. So we do already a whole range of educational things, and the question is, are we going to seize this new technology? One of the reasons to seize it is it's also going to have relevance to the on-campus programs. Right? What happens in the classroom today is not the same as happened in the classroom 20 years ago, and what happens in the classroom 20 years from now is not going to be the same as happens now. We have to make sure education in the classroom is as good as it can be. Are we engaged in some experimentation? Absolutely. Is that a good thing for a university to do? Absolutely. Are we going to make some mistakes along the way? Absolutely. But where do I think we're going to end up? I think we're going to position ourselves further as a kind of player in a new sphere. One online course at Rice had, in terms of initial enrollment, not in terms of people who finished it, 100,000 people, right? So that is an opportunity. So one way to look at it is it's that kind of opportunity that enables us to continue what it is that we do on the campus in some ways. And one of the many things we need is we do need additional revenue streams to succeed at what we're doing. So I think you're right. There are a lot of concerns about this, but I have to say, Rice, have the motto, unconventional wisdom. We have to be willing to be bold in doing things. Our future cannot be in being sort of cautious and risk-averse and not kind of being on the edge of things. There are universities that can afford to do that. I just don't think we're one of them in some ways. Yes?
Oh, besides revenue, there's another R I'd appreciate you addressing, resilience. Jim Hansen sent out a radiative forcing graph about a month ago that is frankly quite worrisome. We've just gone through Harvey. Our faculty, our students, many of the people that make this campus wonderful were really hurt badly with that. And I think we were just lucky that we didn't get the wind like Puerto Rico. And I'd like to hear what your thoughts are going forward into perhaps a more extreme weather.
Yeah, I'm not expert on these things. This is something we want people at Rice looking at in terms of exactly as you put it, the resilience of the city. A lot of investments we made on a campus, I don't think I'll ever ask the question again when we're doing a project, do we really need to put all that money into drainage? I think, I'm not going to ask that question again. And we were really helped. If you look at us in the Texas Medical Center, right, where steps were taken, money was spent in order to build, whether it's resilience or really avoidance, to some extent, those have been successful. We have some of the best people on this campus to think about those issues, not just for Rice, but really for the city of Houston and to some extent the Gulf region. And this relates to the whole broader, set of questions around, climate change and how we should think about the utilization of land. In response to Harvey, we allocated $500,000 to invite faculty proposals to sort of look at research possibilities around questions like that. So we need to be an actor there. You know, what people are saying is not, you know, forget Houston. What they're saying is for Houston to succeed, it better take this seriously in its further planning. And, you know, after Harvey, what a lot of folks did is really descend on our faculty, which was a great thing, and because that's where they saw the experts on not just the sort of infrastructure issues, but some of the health-related issues, education issues. So we intend to be a participant in that effort. Dave, I'm going to give you your chance, because otherwise you'll think I discriminate against you. But you got to keep it brief.
All right, Coach Leebron, I'm going to lob one up to you.
Yeah,
in the V2C and then in the V2C2, there was no mention of athletics. Shouldn't we address the endeavor which provides the brand for Rice University in many people's minds and educates nearly 10% of our undergrads? What will be our vision and intent? Excellence in all endeavors?
So one of the things I sort of want to put the context that it's a roughly speaking, I think it's 10% is not too far off. It's a little bit less than that. I would say it's about 8% of the student body after the expansion. But it's also important to remember that a lot of our students who are not in the intercollegiate athletics are engaged in athletics of various kinds across the university, and of course, big users of the Gibbs Recreation Center, which in my view is a very important addition to the campus. So I think it's important to understand that the importance of a sort of athletic and physical activity across the campus is actually much, much broader than that. I do think, as I told you the other day, recently when the senior leadership got together, we do think that for a variety of reasons, athletics should get some mention and visibility in the strategic document, and the next draft, I hope, will reflect that. I think, candidly, the challenge we face in changing world is the changing world of intercollegiate athletics and really, you know, making good and tough decisions. The university devotes a pretty significant amount of resources to supporting intercollegiate athletics, but we're facing a world in which we're in a conference that puts out a few $100,000 a year and competing against conferences that put out $30 million a year per school. And then we've seen a lot of misbehaviors around that. So and I think, you know, look, athletics is, sometimes folks have short memories, sometimes they have distorted memories, and sometimes they have short and distorted memories. We've had some great successes over the years, and that's what we should aspire to. And, you know, this year, as you know, our women's soccer team has had a remarkable year in terms of its achievements. The women's volleyball team also has had those achievements, and we just have to figure out how in this very changed world, and having spent 4 years on the board of the NCAA, and my staff has, when they want an entertaining rant out from me, and that happens periodically, they know they have two ways to get that. One is to mention the NCAA, and the other is to mention SACS, which is the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Accrediting Board. So we have to figure out how, as Rice, we want to operate in that system and what we can do to achieve excellence. We've had, you know, some success in rebuilding basketball, and I think that's a great thing. We got good facilities there, and it's really going to be, as in other areas, up to our alumni to decide whether it's something that they're willing to come forward to support that endeavor. So I'm going to take maybe, I got two more. I think I should only take one more. You insist. Okay, I'm going to take two more, but really brief, and I'm going to answer them really fast because I think people are thinking, you know, they came here because it said mixer. Mixer meant wine, and this isn't feeling like wine.
I appreciate what you've accomplished here. You know, I arrived at Rice in 1938, so my class is celebrating 75 years after graduation. I'm just thrilled with what's occurred here since I left Rice. We had only 3 buildings here, but what we had was a great faculty, and I think that that is something that is wonderful. I'd like to know one thing. With all your research, are you getting any revenue from patents that are developed by your faculty, and have we ended up owning stock in any corporations that arrive through these patents?
So the question is, do we have things that have come out of our IP? And the answer is yes. And we own interest in a number of ventures that have come out with various kinds of things. What we haven't had, which some other universities have had, is a really big payoff. If you look at successful universities, it's not that they've had a whole bunch of things that yielded $5, $10, $15 million of profit. It's that they've had 1 or 2 which have been 100 or 500 million or something like that. Many of those these days are medical school associated discoveries. But we're confident if we keep plugging away that we're going to hit on those things. And it's not just for money. It's very important to our faculty, particularly I would say in engineering, but not only in engineering, that they have this set of opportunities and the university supports it. But right now, it's not a major stream of revenue for the university, but something we need to keep working on. So you're going to have the last word. Correct? Now I may have the last word. But.
Just real quick, David, it's something we've talked about before. As part of an outreach to the city of Houston, it seems to me if we had a consortium with some of the liberal arts schools where we could allow their STEM students to come here, it would do 2 things. One, science is very expensive, and it's too expensive for St. Thomas or Houston Baptist. But we would get good students, and we could be able to check them out and see how good they would be as graduate students here. And also it would open up those institutions to our students who need a broader liberal arts background. And I think it would really be very beneficial to the city of Houston.
Well, we're willing to explore, anything. I think my concern would be, going back kind of some other questions about, preserving the kind of sense of community and cohesiveness that exists on our campus. I was having lunch today with a prospective student, and it's really good for me to do that periodically because it turns me into marketing mode, and I get to kind of rehearse those things. And there are a number of things that are just remarkable about us, and the way we sit at this intersection of kind of an intimate university, of a kind of feeling of a kind of liberal arts college, while still being among the great research universities. And also, I would add to that, at the intersection of this unbelievable campus, sitting in the middle of the 4th largest city in the country. There are just very few places. And that cohesiveness among our students has some consequences. And one of them is, that I was talking about today, is the fact that our students don't experience Rice as competitive, right? We have probably one of the higher percentages of pre-med students among our competitor universities. And a lot of those places, people will talk to you what the atmosphere in those universities is like, and it's not pleasant. But at Rice, I don't hear that at all. The sense of students are there to support each other. And so I think we have to be careful, particularly with the undergraduate community, because it functions in many ways as this community. And the last thing I would say is, probably if I was making a choice, about sort of reaching out, I might actually reach out to the best students in the community colleges if I was thinking about that. And I would really like to see us take as transfer students. And I do think we should take transfer students. I love transfer students because they've gone someplace else and they thought, I could be someplace better than this. And they're not influenced by a tour guide or things like that. And I think having them at Rice is a great thing. But we need to be flexible in our thinking. So I went longer than I should. I just want to conclude. we can't succeed without all you folks. And the level of engagement and what our students are asking for these days in terms of opportunities to be mentored, to find internships, all of those things are pretty vital. So we hope you'll remain engaged and you'll find others who remain engaged, and I'll stick around for a little while to answer the questions that you thought would embarrass me if you asked publicly, but just thank you all so much for being here.